In my view, and it appears quite apparent that there has been a deliberate effort to stoke up violence in the Jammu region. As you mentioned, you know, since the last decade, things had been quiet. We had been seeing some violence in the last couple of years in the Poonch Rajouri districts, but it has now sort of spread across the whole Jammu region, starting from Poonch in the west to now Katwa in the east. So literally, the whole Jammu area has seen violence.
So is terror back as a major concern?
Uh, Karan, it is back as a major concern, particularly in the Jammu region. So what we are seeing today is that in Kashmir things are relatively calm, but in Jammu region suddenly you have an uptick of terror attacks, ambushes that have taken place.
How serious is the situation in the Jammu region?
It is serious, Karan, because you yourself brought out the sort of data that is there. And if you have attacks happening across the breadth of Jammu division, it is a matter of concern for the government, and they need to quickly react.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. With incidents of terror increasing sharply in the Jammu region, we ask, what should we make of this? How should we understand it? And what should we do in response? Joining me to help answer those questions is someone whose knowledge of this area is unsurpassed. The former Army Commander, Northern Command, General Deependra Singh Hooda. General Hooda, it seems we have a terror attack every second or third day in the Jammu area. As a result, the Indian Express says 14 soldiers were killed in July. In June, the Hindu said that there had been 26 terror attacks since mid 2021, which must by now be well over 30, if not approaching 35. Yet for the previous 10, maybe 15 years, Jammu was peaceful and most people thought it was free of terror. So, how do you explain this change?
So, Karan, thank you for calling me on your show. Uh, in my view, and it appears quite apparent that there has been a deliberate effort to stoke up violence in the Jammu region. As you mentioned, you know, since the last decade, things had been quiet. We had been seeing some violence in the last couple of years in the Poonch Rajouri districts, but it has now sort of spread across the whole Jammu region, starting from Poonch in the west to now Katwa in the east. So literally, the whole Jammu area has seen violence. If you look at statements by police officials 2 years ago, then DGP Dilbag said, except one district, Jammu is militancy free, and there are only three, four terrorists who are there in one district. Recent statements by the DGP talk about 60 to 80 terrorists, talk about how infiltration has happened from the line of control and the international border. So I think it's been a just deliberate effort by Pakistan. I would clearly say that also, Karan, because all these are freshly infiltrated terrorists and a deliberate effort to stoke up militancy violence in Jammu.
Now, the interesting thing, General Huda, is that the official position of the government of India is that the situation in Jammu and Kashmir is either normal or fast approaching what they call normalcy. Yet we have this spread of terror in the Jammu region. So is terror back as a major concern?
Uh, Karan, it is back as a major concern, particularly in the Jammu region. So what we are seeing today is that in Kashmir things are relatively calm. But in Jammu region, suddenly you have an uptick of terror attacks, ambushes that have taken place. I think some of these are also aimed at narrative building. So the idea is not merely that you are killing three soldiers or four soldiers, but sort of a narrative that terrorism is well and alive in Jammu and Kashmir, and that the government claims of normalcy are not accurate. So there is also a bit of narrative building around this, what is happening today.
Tell me this, General Saab, how serious is the situation in the Jammu region?
It is serious, Karan, because you yourself brought out the sort of data that is there. And if you have attacks happening across the breadth of Jammu division, it is a matter of concern for the government, and they need to quickly react. Some actions have been taken, as we spoke before the show. Additional soldiers are being brought in into the area. The counter infiltration, particularly on the international border, which is manned by BSF, is being strengthened. I know additional army soldiers have been pushed into the area. There is talk about revival of special police officers who are locals, the village defense guard that is there, the need to enhance the outreach to the local population so that local support is not there. So I think it is serious, and I think it is also being taken seriously by the government.
Now, the terror attacks in the Jammu region are happening essentially along the Pir Panjal range in places like Doda, Poonch, Kathua, Reasi, Rajouri. As a former army commander who knows this area extremely well, why has it become vulnerable in the last 1 year or 18 months?
So the couple of reasons, Karan. One was, you recall, in 2020 when we had this situation with China in eastern Ladakh. There was some thinning out of troops from this area. They were pulled out from here and sent to eastern Ladakh. And so when thinning out happens, gaps occur, and these are taken advantage of by the terrorists. The terrain in Jammu region along the Pir Panjal is extremely challenging, Karan. Local population density is low, so human intelligence flowing in becomes a bit of a problem. The road density is low, so movement of troops as compared to Kashmir Valley, where lots of roads, plain area, movement is faster. So these are the areas that now the terrorists have taken advantage of, and which is why we are seeing this uptick in violence along the Pir Panjal range.
Reports also suggest that the central government's move to create reservations for Paharis has annoyed the Gujars and the Bakarwals, and that has gone against India's interests. The information we would receive from them has stopped. Is that another factor?
So, Karan, the Gujar Bakarwal community played an enormous role in rolling back militancy from Jammu region, and sometimes I feel that we don't give them enough credit for this. And you're right when you.
You've frozen, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, could you begin? You said you were right and you froze at that point.
Okay, so let me restart. So, as I said, you were right in saying that the Gujar Bakarwals have played a tremendous role in rolling back insurgency from Jammu. Sometimes I think we haven't given them enough credit for this. You're also right when you say that the reservation that was announced for the Paharis did see some angst among the Gujar Bakarwal communities. I mean, there were protests by them. I also feel that some with the thinning out of some troops in this area, the fact that there was normalcy, even the outreach by the army towards the Gujar Bakarwal community has sort of weakened. So I think there is a need to engage with this community more and ensure that the kind of human intelligence they provided us in the past keeps coming into us.
Tell me, General Saab, is there a sense in which the army or the BSF, or maybe both, have let their guard down? Did they become complacent because for 10, 12, 13 years we had increasing normalcy in the Jammu region? Or were they taken in by claims made by politicians that things were back close to normal?
Look, I can tell you practically that the army does what it's supposed to do, and really Claims by politicians are claims by politicians. They really don't impact operation. But having said that, yes, I would say that some sort of complacency does set in when things are quiet, things are normal. Your own sort of standard operating procedures and drills sometimes tend to weaken. We know that at least in one or two cases, for example, vehicles were moved without road opening patrols being in place. But I am also aware that this back to the basics is now being practiced by the army, and they're saying we need to get back to our basic drills, basic procedures, and make sure that incidents don't happen because of laxity on our part.
So there was a certain laxity, there was a certain dropping of the guard.
Certainly, Karan, because we don't know, we can't sort of make a general statement for every incident that has happened. But as I said, in at least a few incidents, we do know that some of the procedures that were supposed to be followed were not.
Let me approach this issue a little differently. As you said, and as has been reported in the press and also said by the government, it's widely believed that these terrorists are infiltrating from Pakistan either across the international border or even sometimes across the line of control. The question is, why is Pakistan finding it so easy to push terrorists across?
So, Karan, it's not easy. Let me tell you. We don't know how many attempts that they have made and how many of those attempts have been successful. But definitely, they are pushing in terrorists more and more, particularly into the Jammu region. So that we know. Uh, it is challenging, Karan, in some ways to uh, ensure that there is sort of zero infiltration along the line of control of the international border. The terrain is what it is. Uh, there is also, I dare say, a sort of a drug terrorist nexus that is happening. We have reports of some arms and equipment being pushed in through drones. So we need to now start sort of seriously looking at how do we strengthen our counter-infiltration posture even more, which is why we are seeing 2 battalions of BSF come in additional to guard the international border in the Jammu region.
Let me ask you a layman question. Most people who are not experts on Kashmir believe that Indian soldiers and Pakistani soldiers stand virtually face to face, eyeball to eyeball, unit to unit against each other. If the line of control or the border are so tightly manned, how do these terrorists cross over without being detected?
So there is, the terrain is mountainous. There are nalas, there are streams which flow across on the international border, often in the rainy season, because of streams that are flowing across from India to Pakistan. The fence gets damaged, it collapses. In the Kashmir region, current because of the snow, every year about 30% of the fence completely gets damaged, has to be repaired. So I think there is this feeling that we have this fence and it's being manned, and so why is it that some people can still sneak in? But the terrain, the weather, I mean, those kind of challenges are there, which permit some level of infiltration to continue. There is also reports, and in the past, tunnels have been used, Sharon, particularly on the international border side and some areas of line of control also. Tunnels which are dug under the fence and people are able to get across.
So the terrain or the wider geography, as well as the harsh climate in winter, act against our interest.
Absolutely.
Now, R.R. Swain, the Director General of Police in Jammu and Kashmir, has said, and you quoted this a moment ago yourself, and I'm quoting him, as of today, 70 to 80 terrorists have come with arms and ammunition. To me, a layman, that sounds like a very large number to have come across in a fairly short space of time. But is it a large number?
So, considering that there were thousands of terrorists operating in Jammu and Kashmir, you could say it's not a large number, but if you compare with, look, Jammu was relatively militancy free. Everything was fine. There were three, four terrorists, sort of roaming around in this area. And suddenly, when you talk about 70 to 80, then I think it should sort of raise some hackles, as far as the security forces and the government is concerned. Uh, the Jammu region is very, very vast, and now you have to put in additional resources, put in additional troops, improve your human intelligence. That sort of tells you that this is something serious that needs to be tackled on priority. The other thing with Jammu region, Karan, is it's a mixed population. 60% Hindus, 40% Muslims. So if you have targeted attacks like you had in that Riyasi Pilgrim case, you do sense that there could be sort of also communal trouble, which is why keeping Jammu quiet is important.
How come these 70 to 80 remain largely undetected? Where are they hiding? Or are they getting cooperation from the local population to a degree that we're not aware of?
So certainly, for 70 to 80 terrorists to survive in the jungles and mountainous areas, Karan, there has to be some local support now. Whether this local support is out of coercion, because there are some reports that these people go to a house and tell them, make 100 chapatis for us, or we'll kill you. But definitely, there would also be some active overground workers who are supporting these people.
So, in other words, the disaffection that has seeped into the local population is also working against us.
Oh yes, certainly. So there was a time when we used to say. In fact, I commanded the Jammu Corps before I moved to Northern Command. So I know the area well. And that time we used to say that foreign terrorists cannot survive in this area because straight away locals will give you information. So as I said, how widespread is this? I would still feel, Karan, that a majority of the population in Jammu is in favor of the state. Uh, but we do have to sort of increase, as I said, our outreach, our connect with the people to ensure that intelligence flows in faster than it is currently.
Tell me this, General Hooda. At this point of time, and indeed for the last year, if not longer, Pakistan has faced extremely serious internal problems of its own. It has a collapsing economy. It has confused, quarreling politicians. It has a very uncertain situation with a former prime minister sitting in jail. Why then is Pakistan using this precise moment to provoke India? What's the logic? What's the understanding behind what it's trying to do?
So, Karan, this question sometimes sort of becomes difficult to answer. As you said, facing a poly crisis, and then at the same time, sort of upping the ante against India. Uh, I think they want to show that government claims that normalcy has returned is false. They perhaps also feel a sense of frustration over the fact that the Indian state is absolutely not engaging with them on Kashmir, where for decades they felt that they have a stake. So I would think sort of mix of these things. Traditionally, I think there has been a feeling in Pakistan, somewhat wrong in the Pakistan military, that by scaling up violence in Kashmir, we can perhaps bring India to the negotiating table. I mean, Kargil war was one such example that India is not talking to us on Kashmir, so maybe increasing violence will bring greater visibility on Kashmir, and perhaps the Indian state will engage with us on Kashmir. I don't think that's true, but I would say it's a combination of these things plus the fact that the Pakistan army is under tremendous pressure, from the TTP and the Baluch insurgents, and maybe this is a way of saying that despite all that, Kashmir remains sort of central to our thinking.
Do you really believe that the Pakistanis could think that stepping up terrorism will make India come to the negotiating table or at least resume some sort of talks with Pakistan, even if not formal, back channel at least?
I think so, Karan. As I said, if you look at whatever they have done in the past, and then the idea somewhat was that internationalize the whole thing, try and show that there is resistance in the Kashmir state. They constantly talk about UN resolutions that it's an issue between India and Pakistan that is unresolved. The fact that escalation could take place because of increasing terrorist violence will occupy the international community's attention more. So maybe there will be some conversation that will happen around Kashmir. I think that thinking is certainly there.
Explain to me, General Hooda, one of the contradictions or at least paradoxes of the present moment. The ceasefire from 2003, which was reinforced in 2021, has held pretty effectively for 3 years. The Indian government itself, the Indian army itself has accepted and admitted that. And yet, at the same time, the Pakistanis have been able to push through 70 to 80, maybe more terrorists. Is that a contradiction or a paradox there?
It is a bit now. So when the ceasefire happened, Karan, I think it was in the interest of both countries. We were at that time also facing a challenge from China in eastern Ladakh, and so obviously it made sense to have one border quiet. It also suited Pakistan not to have violence along the line of control. It made a tremendous difference to the local population, Karan, because frankly, most of the casualties that were occurring in the ceasefire violations were not military, but civilian population that resided along the line of control. So I think it made sense at that time. Today, yes, it's a bit of a paradox. People are saying, what's the point of the ceasefire if Pakistan continues to push terrorists in? So I know this discussion and debate is going on, at least within the military circles, of is this a good idea? Should some pressure be built on Pakistan army if it continues to do what it does?
What's your answer to that question?
So, Karan, I think there are two ways to look at it. One, okay, these are low levels of violence. Really doesn't need a very strong response, and so something that the Indian state can live with is one response. The second is, look, if we do not do anything to deter Pakistan, they will continue to sort of lead us through these tiny cuts. And I think we need to look at some way that we can at least limit or deter Pakistan from doing what it is doing. So I would go with the second viewpoint.
Now, roughly 10, 12 days ago, the government announced that 2,000 BSF Jawans were to be transferred from Orissa to Jammu to beef up security along the international border. Today's Hindu reports that a further 2,000 Assam rifle soldiers will be moved from Manipur also to the Jammu region, I presume this time perhaps to the international border. But tell me, is this the right response?
Look, so Karan, we have to tackle it in sort of two ways. One, as we said, the whole cause of this problem, infiltration happening, is from Pakistan. So there is an external element that we need to deal with. But there is also an internal element. I mean, if you have 70 to 80 terrorists going around, carrying out ambushes, causing casualties to military and civilian personnel, I mean, those people have to be dealt with within our territory. And so for that, if we need additional force levels, they have to be brought in. You have to increase the security of the international border, which is being done by the BSF. There are some rifles, in my sense, will probably go into the sort of counter-terrorism grid in the hinterland to assist the army. So while we deal with Pakistan in whichever way we think is appropriate, there is also a need to at least eliminate these 60 to 80 terrorists. I mean, it's not only the numbers. You see the kind of maybe concern, panic among the local population that these people are roaming around here. They can cause civilian casualties. They are attacking army people and getting away with it, which is something that was not seen in the past. So I think just that it will increase the fear in the local population of terrorists, and so that also needs to be sort of tackled.
Tell me, General Sir, how do we know that there are precisely 60 to 80 terrorists infiltrated from Pakistan. How do we come to that pretty precise figure? Because if we can't stop them infiltrating, how do we know how many have infiltrated?
No, we can. I'm not saying we can, that the border is completely open, that anybody can sort of come in. The information on the numbers comes through local sources. As I said, so there are people who are taking support from the local communities, so going to people's houses for food, shelter, etc. And that information does trickle in because, as I said, not everyone is willingly doing this, so they are coerced. So we get to know, so many groups are there in Poonch district, so many in Rajouri. I would say the numbers that are assessed would be reasonably accurate. That much information does provide.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Now, steps to beef up soldiers or BSF Jawans along either the line of control or the international border are certain obvious steps, and they are being taken. How critical is it that we cut off or at least curb and contain the local support they get? How important is it that we reach out to the Bakarwals and the Gujars who 10 years ago were great sources of information but don't seem to be any longer? How do we get over that difference and divide that's been created?
So Karan, as I said, I think it's critical. Just as terrorists rely on local support to survive, so does the army need local support for human intelligence and for telling us where these people are. So that outreach, if at all, has weakened, and I think it has weakened in some ways, is something that needs to be strengthened. Just the additional presence of troops, Karan, helps because then you're able to set up more posts, you're able to set up more operating bases, you're able to patrol more in these remote areas, meet with the local population, assist them where they have problems. So that outreach certainly needs much greater strengthening. We also need to sort of involve the local communities in defense. So I talked about the village defense guards. They are the sort of first line of defense. Now, every remote village, every group of houses cannot be protected by security forces. So if you have armed people in these areas,
You
ensure. Yeah.
tell me this, General Saab. We know that reservations of the Paharis have created some disaffection amongst Gujars and Bakarwals. What about the overall anti-Muslim atmosphere and mood and rhetoric often of the government? Has that also affected the way the local population views the Indian state, perhaps even the Indian army? Has that seeped into their consciousness and turned them somewhat against us?
That sentiment is there. Karan, in my own conversations with some of the Gujar Bakarwal community members who I am in touch with, having been there, they do say that, look, don't treat us as you sort of generally talk about Muslims. We are one community that has provided tremendous assistance to the security forces and to the government as far as fighting militants is concerned. So don't talk about us in the same breath. I mean, that sentiment has been expressed there.
So we're paying a price for the rhetoric that we use.
Yeah. We know that. And sometimes I think we need to be more sort of responsible in how we make statements and so consider what the impact of those statements are.
Do you think the government is aware of this?
I'm certain, look, that, the local sentiment that is there, there are local politicians, there are local security force people, the police is there, and I'm sure the sentiment is known to those who are operating in those areas.
And so there's a need to contain and curb that rhetoric.
Absolutely.
General Hooda, thank you very much for the time you've made available to me. Take care. Stay safe.
My pleasure, Karan. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.